So the last portion of this module we'll talk about coverage analyses. The coverage really refers to the extent to which given verification activities satisfies their objectives. So they're most often applied just to detecting, testing activities. So if you look at this, there's really two coverage analyses that we look at here. One is requirements coverage and the other one is structural coverage. In requirements coverage, we're going to make sure that for each requirement, a software requirement that we have, there are test cases. Yeah. And then when there are test cases, we're going to make sure that these test cases include both normal range tests as well as robustness tests. In other words, we're going to check out, do we have all the software requirements covered? On the other hand, structural coverage, we're going to just check out if all the software structures, the lines of code, were sufficiently exercised by the requirements-based test procedures. And we're going to find out if there are some lines of code or some structures within the source code that or executable code that have not been executed. So the intent of structural coverage is really to provide evidence that the code structure was verified to the degree required for the applicable software level. Is everything there? Well, so what does this really try to find out? So this may uncover code that was not exercised during the test, and this may be because there's inadequacies in the software requirement, or it may actually there's some problems, some shortcomings in the test cases that were generated from these requirements. In addition, of course, this also could mean that that code is dead code that's no longer being used and should not be in there, or deactivated code that is activated by an operational scenario. And of course, the textbook talks about these two. So if you look at the whole testing aspect of verification, it's kind of summarized in this particular picture, which comes directly from module08C. So the test case generation is based on the requirements themselves. It's broken down in low-level tests, in which case we look at the low-level requirements, come up with test cases for the low-level requirements. Software integration tests, in which ways we're going to look at how the modules interact, the interrelationships. And hardware-software integration tests, in which case we're going to check out how the software is doing on the target hardware platform. Then, of course, we're going to perform a software requirements coverage analysis. In other words, is every requirement covered? In other words, do we have a test case for every requirement? And then, of course, you're going to do software structure coverage analysis to check out if all the code is actually covered or executed by the requirements.